Thank you, Mr. Fradd, for your insightful talk, and thank you so much for clarifying this often neglected area. So I suggest that we do some further clarification by moving into the comments or the questions section. Just a reminder, if you want to send in a question, go to slido.com. You can find this piece of paper on your chair, and if you scan the upper QR code, it will take you to the site, and then you can just type it in. Questions are already flowing in. And so I thought we start with a very common question that is very practical in nature. What is the first step in getting rid of porn addiction?
Yeah. So I think the first step is just asking yourself a very simple question. Well, a couple of questions. Is this the kind of man I want to be? Or is this the kind of woman I want to be? Because you can do it. Like, you can, there's nothing to stop you from wasting the rest of your life looking at pornography. So that option's available to you if you want it. I think it'll be a terrible idea, but it's an option. And so you say, well, do you want to do this thing that's an option for you? And I think a lot of us would go, no, like, I don't. Like, even if the church said nothing about it, this isn't the kind of person I want to be. If someone's at my funeral and reading a eulogy, I don't want them being like, bloody Frank, he was really passionate about porn, wasn't he? And it's just great that he was so passionate about something, you know? It's like, no, I don't want that. So you go, okay. And then another question might be this. How would my life look in 5 years from now if today I got really serious about overcoming pornography? What's the best possible outcome? Or what if you did nothing about it? How might your life look in 5 years? What's the worst thing that could happen? And so I think making a decision that this isn't the kind of person I want to be, and then, okay, now there's some things that you can do. A couple of obvious things would be there's a lot to say here, and I've written a lot of it in my book. I don't want to say too much. You stop me when I'm boring, okay?
Sure.
Realizing what our triggers are is really helpful. And we might think of an emotional trigger and then a sort of external trigger. Because I think for those of us who masturbate with some frequency or look at pornography or act out sexually, I don't know what you think, but it seems to me that the reason we do this is to soothe ourselves. So when it's hot, as it is tonight, my body just naturally sweats to cool myself down. It's not doing a great job, but that's okay. When we're cold, we shiver to warm up. We don't think about it, we just do that. But what do you do when you feel emotionally agitated? Like, what do you do when you feel embarrassed in front of your peers? Or when somebody rejects you? Or points something out that you're embarrassed by? Well, I think what we do is we seek a way to regulate our emotional affect. And we can do that in a healthy way, maybe through having a conversation with a mature friend, processing our feelings, maybe in therapy, or having I don't know, there's a myriad of things you could do. But then you could also regulate in an unhealthy way. And for those of us who have masturbated, let's say, since we were children, we may not have known what we were doing. I didn't. It was just this thing that I did. And I didn't even realize that I was doing it when I when I was in trouble, or I felt like I was stupid. It became like a pacifier. And so I think recognizing, okay, what is this like these emotional triggers within me that then lead me to try to self-soothe? I wonder what you think of that. And then the next question might be, what are the external triggers? You know? And it might not even be sexual, right? It could be something like when I have 3 beers or a couple of glasses of whiskey, my defenses are down and I end up there. Or, you know, maybe you've got a bad relationship with your mother, and when you speak to her, you feel terribly anxious, and something evolves from that. Maybe you watch television that contains sex scenes. Like, why think that's okay? And then, of course, you end up looking for harder things, you see? So I think being like really honest about why is it that I do the things that I do, and what is it that's sort of provoking me to self-soothe? These are good questions. I think it's also imperative that you have what we could call an accountability partner. If you're a woman who struggles with sexual sin like this, you should find another woman to confide in. Women sometimes say to me, but how do I know who I can trust? And I always say something that sounds really unhelpful, but I guess isn't. I just say, you already know that. Of course you do. Like, you as a woman, you already know which women you can trust, and I hope you have at least one woman in your life that you could confide in, and then I'd confide in with her. And if you're a man, I was going to say fella, I don't know if you say that, a man, finding another man to confide in, and to kind of hold each other accountable. And not in a boring sort of, hey, I just fell to pornography, oh man, I'm so sorry, I'll pray for you, thanks so much, and that's it. Like, there are more helpful ways to go about accountability relationships. Like, imagine 3 concentric circles, yeah? You have an inner circle, a middle circle, and an outer circle. You might even do this as an experiment. In the inner circle, write those activities that you engage in sexually that you don't want to engage in. In the middle circle, write those things that when you do them, you find yourself in the middle circle. So it might be like doom scrolling social media, where you just dissociate and you're no longer really engaging with the world and you slide into that. You know, it might be whatever, the things we mentioned earlier about drinking too much or seeing sex scenes in television, okay? But then the third circle should be those activities that make your life more beautiful. So you might decide, okay, I know that I need to eat healthier than I'm eating. And so what does that mean? Well, here I like Jordan Peterson's advice. What's something you could do that you actually would do, because you're more pathetic than you think? So, like, obviously there's tons of stuff you could do, but like, look at you, you won't do them. So what's something you could do that even you, like me, like even wretched me would do? Well, all right, do that. You know, my wife has been eating carnivore, meaning meat only, for the last 7 months because she's terribly sick. She's gotten a lot better. I tried that for a month and decided I'd rather live a less optimal life and have an occasional beer. But I could still eat healthier than I'm currently eating. So maybe I decide, well, I should eat this way. And it's like, well, how many times do you want to work out a week? And what does workout even look like? Like, maybe it doesn't mean going to the gym, but surely it means moving your body. Like, surely that's a good idea. So what is it you think you'd like to do? And so you come up with these things. You know, you might say, well, I'm not... You know, I'd like to read a good book. I'd like to always be in the middle of a good book. I want to memorize poetry. You know, I can recite The Office to you. I can recite stupid songs I heard when I was 16 to you. Surely I have the ability to recite beautiful poetry, so I'm going to do that, right? So you do that and you write that. And then when you talk to your accountability partner, it's a lot more effective. It's, hey, John, you said you want to be reading good books. Are you doing it? Yeah, good. You said you want to be doing this. Like, are you doing these things? Yes, no. Okay, well, like, pick it up. What do you need to do that thing? Yeah, so those are a few ideas.
Since the digital Wild West is in the title of the event, the question is, do you support making pornography illegal? And if so, what do you say to those who say that making it illegal actually harms the rights of adults who say that they have the freedom to be in videos? And they should have the freedom to access these videos once they are adults. What do you say to them?
Sorry, the last part of your question was they feel they have the freedom...
Like, they say that because of freedom of speech or the freedom to do with their bodies whatever they please, they have the freedom to be in porn videos.
No, I absolutely support banning pornography. It's destroying families and people, and... And the idea that, like, exposing naked people to children is an idea of free speech, like, that's not free speech, that's sexual abuse, you know? That said, at least where I live in America, it seems incredibly unlikely that that will happen, since the vast majority of people in America wouldn't want it to happen. So when I get into a debate with somebody who might be more libertarian about pornography, I say to them, this is what I say. I say, okay, so you're worried that I want to ban pornography, and I do, So, okay, but to decide whether or not it should be banned, surely we should at least know whether it's harmful. Because if it's not harmful, there's no point asking whether it should be banned. So I usually kind of fire my efforts in that direction. But yes, I do believe it should be banned.
There was an interesting question that somebody sent in. The question is, should Christians cooperate with, say, feminists who also oppose pornography when it comes to actually combating pornography?
When a maniac is at the door, feuding brothers reconcile. I stole that from Peter Kraft. Now, the feminist is not my brother or sister. I think feminism is an evil ideology, and yet even a blind hog finds an acorn occasionally. And I'm not calling feminists hogs, don't quote me. Yeah, I've shared stages with communist feminists before. Someone I have respect for, I would say. Her name is Gail Dines. I wouldn't recommend reading her book because I think it's quite vulgar, but she is very much against pornography and comes at it from a feminist angle. In my book, I cite a bunch of feminist sources that agree with me that pornography is wrong. Now, we don't agree all the way down, but yeah, I think in certain issues like this, needing to be like, all right, we disagree about a lot of stuff, but like right now, like our kids are being exposed to porn, and our children are sexually preying upon one another because of what they've seen in porn. So like, could we at least agree just to put that stuff to the side for a moment and see how we can agree to make some kind of impact? So there's a group called the National Center on Sexual Exploitation in DC that kind of gathers together people from all walks of life, Mormons and Catholics and communists and feminists, and who just think the world would probably be a better place if we didn't exploit each other sexually.
Maybe we can go on one more regarding pornography, and then maybe we can then move over to some other more general questions. It says that porn is a great problem, but masturbation is more widely done among all people and doesn't require porn. So how can we raise warrior children who fight against it?
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of using ugly words for ugly behaviors, you know? And I think there's been this intentional effort to change the ugly words to make it more appealing and less ugly, to make people more comfortable in the ugly things that they do. So I'd like to bring back the word self-abuse. You know, we live in a society that would call masturbation self-care. I think we should call it self-abuse. Fornication, not sleeping around. Adultery, not cheating. Marriage isn't a game. Sodomy, not gay love. Yeah, a child mutilation, not gender-affirming care. Like, stop lying. It's not like, and then abortion would be what? Child sacrifice to Moloch? And I think that's important for all of us, you know, like we should probably not want to do ugly things, and reminding ourselves that they're ugly is a good idea. Now, okay, so suppose you find your 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old daughter masturbating. Or maybe you're such a beautiful mother that your 7-year-old or whatever daughter decides to even tell you about that. How beautiful is that? So what might you do in that situation? You might say, okay, so yes, do you notice that when you touch, and by the way, please use anatomically correct words, yes? If the words penis and vagina make you uncomfortable, that's your fault. That's not my fault, okay? So I'm going to just keep doing that, and you can work that out later with your therapist or whatever. You might say to your daughter, yeah, when you touch your vagina, it feels really good. It feels very sensitive, because one day when you're married and you can explain sex how you would like to explain it, it's a beautiful way to come together. It's like a very special hug that mums and dads have. So I think that when you're touching your vagina, that's a sign that you probably need a hug. So would you come and just hug me? I love you so much, and I'd love just to hold you. You know, like again, it's this self-soothing thing. It's like, of course people masturbate. You know, what's interesting isn't why people masturbate, it's why they don't. It's like, it's not interesting why people would masturbate. Well, it feels good, that's why. It's not interesting. Why would people look at pornography? Are you kidding? What's wrong with you? Because it's sexually arousing and that feels good and orgasms feel good. That's why. What's interesting is why there would be people who go, you know what? I don't want to. Okay, that's interesting. Why the hell not? And then you explore that. That's really interesting. So I do think we could talk to our children about the goodness of sexuality and the goodness of their own bodies. And we can do that in age-appropriate ways. So if you're bathing your child in the bathtub and he is yanking on his penis or something like that, what do you say? Well, you know that you don't say, stop, that's dirty. No good Catholic would ever say that. But you also don't go for it. So what do? Well, you could say something like, okay, your penis is sacred, but it's not a toy, so we don't treat it like it's a toy. You know, something like that. Like if you walk in on your 8-year-old admiring his erection and not understanding what it is, you could say, that is awesome. Your erection is a sign to you that God is calling you to fatherhood one day. Again, I think what's happened is you and I have been exposed to porn. We have our own history of sexual sin, and we're just terrified about the subject. But our children aren't like that. They don't have hang-ups like we do. When you say the word pornography to your child, you're not downloading, computer drives of images into their head. You know, Aristotle was right. In order to be in the mind, it has to be first experienced in reality. So I think we can talk about this straightforwardly with our children. And honestly, speaking about it with our children when they're young is better in the sense that they're not even awkward about it yet. Like maybe if they're 15 and this is the first conversation you're having with them, okay, now it's awkward. But it doesn't have to be when they're young. You know, like here's a conversation you could have with your, let's say, daughter about modesty. You know, so one day someone dropped off these hand-me-down clothes in a big bag. And my daughter put on this 2-piece bathing suit. And she walked out and she looked very cute. And my son said, "Oh, you can see her womb." Said, "Not unless you have X-ray vision." I said, okay, is that good or bad? He said, bad. This actually is a real story. It's actually happened. Sometimes you get it right. I don't tell you the stories about how I got it wrong, but here's how I got it right. And I said, okay, it's bad. Why? Now, why is it bad? Is it because her body's bad? And he went, no, it's because it's so good. Yes. All right. Why do we veil the Eucharist? Like, why don't we just lay it on the ground in the church or just lay it in the pews? Well, because it would be sacrilegious, but what would it do to the Christian? The Christian wouldn't learn to reverence it. It's like we have to put it in a tabernacle or behind an iconostasis, and we have to veil it. Why? Because we have to be taught that that is the most sacred thing on the planet. And it's not easy to realize. And I think this is why we dress modestly. Not because your body's bad, it's exactly the opposite. It's precisely because your body is so good. So anyway, the point had to do about masturbation, and my point is we should have ongoing conversations with our children about the goodness of sex and their bodies and pornography as they grow. And not just a sex talk. Like you don't give your kids a math talk, like the one math lesson and they're done. But when it comes to sexuality, why think there should be one talk? It should be an ongoing conversation. And yeah, you won't get it right, and sometimes it'll be weird, and sometimes you go, was that even helpful? But and also don't be afraid of, let's say you're here today and you do masturbate, and you do look at pornography, and you're trying to stop, please God. You are not a hypocrite for telling your children not to look at pornography, if you're trying to stop. Look, because none of us live up to our own standards, if we have the right ones. A hypocrite isn't someone who fails to live up to their own standards. A hypocrite is someone who demands something of everybody else that he doesn't demand of himself. But you're demanding this of yourself, but you're falling short. Okay, get to confession, get up, keep going. So don't tell your children about your own struggles. I don't think this is helpful at all. But just to sort of, all right.
Thank you. Actually, this is one of the most upvoted questions. It says, I saw your talk with Jordan Peterson. What's your overall opinion about him and his views? And what was the most surprising thing during your talk?
I really enjoyed my time with Jordan Peterson. He was very kind and professional and friendly. He didn't seem it, I guess. People said he seemed angry. I didn't pick up on that. I didn't think he was angry. Maybe it's because I don't think he was angry at me. Maybe that's why I felt safe. But I really enjoyed my chat with him. There was an interview that took place about a week after by a fella called Alex O'Connor, who did a much better job than I did in pressing Dr. Peterson about his views on Christianity. And I was shocked that Peterson even, said, okay, fine. Yeah, if there was a video camera on the tomb that day, my answer is yes, he probably did walk out of the tomb. Like, that's pretty wild. And then he said, but I just don't know what that means. So I'm not sure. When you do an interview like this, you always wish, gosh, I should have said that better, or there's so many other things I could have asked. So my opinion of him is I really like him. I think he's saying a lot of true things. And we should be patient with people who aren't yet Catholics or Christians, yeah? I think what happens is we hear about somebody, we like a lot of what they say, we think that maybe they're even on the verge of converting, and we pray for them and say lots of nice things about them publicly, and then when they don't convert according to our time schedule, we get very angry and self-righteous and stuck up. But how about just say, yeah, like he's not yet a Catholic, clearly, and as a Catholic, I would like that very much to happen, and I pray that it will happen. But it doesn't mean I can't learn from him. I can learn from people like Aristotle, I can learn from pagans, and I can also throw out what they say that's false, and presumably you can do that the same thing with Jordan Peterson. Does that answer?
Sure. When having private conversations about religion, what is a good point at which one turns on the apologetics mode? Should there be such a point? Maybe you could also explain what apologetics means for those who don't know.
Sure. I think it's 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think. But it says, always be ready to give a defense to anyone who calls you to account for the hope that's in you. And that word defense is apologia in Greek, from which we get the word apologetics. So it's come to mean a defense of the Christian faith. When do you turn that on? I don't know. It depends on the person you're talking with. I don't like feeling like a project that someone's working on. You don't either. Like when the Mormons come to your door, I don't know if they do that here, but they're not just coming to hang out and fix the light bulb. Like they're here because they think there's something wrong with you that needs to be fixed. And even if they were right, it's not pleasant. And what I don't like especially is sometimes when you feel like they're pretending that I'm not a project. Oh no, we're just saying hi, So I don't know, I'm increasingly more of the opinion that you should be straightforward with people. So, I have friends and they say, well, do you want me to be Catholic? I'm like, yes, obviously. But if you don't, I'd still like to be friends with you. And I do mean that, Like my friend Cameron Bertuzzi, who I knew for years, and we debated about Catholicism for a while. And then he announced to me that he was going to become Catholic, and I flew him to the Vatican and interviewed him. You can watch that if you want. That was fun. But just to be straightforward, I think, rather than pretending you're not and being all cagey about it. I think we should take a holistic interest in people's lives, not focusing just on those areas we think they need to change, but we should be interested in what they love and what they hate and what they're afraid of and what they're looking forward to and what their parents are like and what their favorite book is. And, we should actually be interested and not just feign interest for the sake of another notch on the belt, as it were. Hopefully we don't think of people like that, but sometimes it does feel that we can fall into that.
Another upvoted question is, what do you recommend to young men and women striving to find a good Catholic spouse?
I'm increasingly of the opinion that I don't understand the dating scene today. So I just want to shut my mouth, because here's what I know. When a man is very bitter about women, it's usually because he hasn't dated many. When a woman is bitter about men, it's usually because she's dated too many. So if someone's going to complain to me about women, my new rule is they have to be married. Or at least dating, or at least in the game, as it were. So I don't know how difficult it is today. It seems, from what people tell me, very difficult. So I don't know if I'd be very helpful in giving you advice. I don't know, how did I meet my wife? I met her doing missionary work. I remember just liking her, just thinking she was cool. And I just wanted her attention. You ever notice that within yourself? And then you notice you noticing that you want their attention, and that's kind of embarrassing. Ugh, I shouldn't be like that, but I am. Just me again. All right. And I remember not even, because people say, were you immediately attracted to your wife? And I'm like, well, I mean, kind of. Because it's lots of women are attractive. Sure. So it's yeah, she's attractive, generically, but once I got to know her, then I remember thinking, oh, I really want to be attracted to her now. Because if that could line up, really good friend and me actually being attracted, that'd be awesome. And then it did work out. And so I quit my job and moved to America and married her. So I don't know. What's my advice? I don't know.
Move to America?
No, don't. Yeah, I have no advice. Good luck. I don't know. Try. Just try. Yeah. And realize that, like, the girl you're going to date is, you know, like, she has her flaws and she's not perfect, but, like, have you met you? Like, you know, to kind of paraphrase Jordan Peterson, the fact she's not throwing stones at you is something you should be glad about, you know, and get to know her and have the courage to ask her out, even if it's awkward and even if she doesn't respond well and even if that's her fault. Like, just do it. Just go out for coffee, hang out, have fun. And realize that this first or second or third date, you don't have to know whether you're going to marry her. You know, you don't have to know that she likes the traditional Latin Mass. Like, just settle down and just have fun. And those questions can be asked if things start to get serious. But just, like, you know, that's what I'd say. I don't know.
Actually, you mentioned Latin Mass, and somebody's asking, why do you think Latin Masses are becoming popular with young adults?
Because I think people long for reverence. In an increasingly secular world, we just want reverence. And I think also, like, human beings shouldn't exist without tradition. To be cut off from tradition is just to be, like, floating through the void. And, you know, people like me, like, I was raised after the Second Vatican Council, and it was like people decided that all those traditions were thrown out now. And so I grew up not even knowing what the rosary was. I didn't use incense. The priest would be like, call me John. So it's like, we long for tradition, and we're right to. And I think we're in this awkward stage of church history where all of us are like, okay, our family sold the inheritance that should have been mine, all the family heirlooms that should have come to me, they burnt. Now I'm in this awkward position looking for something that should have been mine that wasn't given to me. Is there anger in that? Yeah, and I kind of think it's justified. I think that's why you sometimes encounter trad people who are angry. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Now, obviously, anger can very easily fall into sin, which we want to avoid, but I get that frustration, you know? So I think we want a place to kiss the ground. I want a place where my hunger for God is treated with seriousness and not mocked with awful music and, you know, the whims of the priest or stuff like that. Like, I want to, like kneel down, open up your mouth and receive the Lord. Like, know your place. We want to know our place, you know? So it's no wonder that young people are flocking either to the Latin Mass or to the Byzantine liturgy or to reverent Novus Ordos in droves. And it's no wonder that, like, liturgical abuse is so gross that I don't even think anyone's defending it anymore. Well, maybe they are, I don't know, but like I had this thought of, this gave me some hope recently, I shared it. I can't think of one successful Catholic YouTube channel. And what does successful mean? I don't know. Let's say 25,000 subscribers. I can't think of one Catholic YouTube channel with 25,000 subscribers or more that's promoting things like sodomy or contraception or, you know, like liturgical dancing or like, I don't know of one. And you might say, well, that's the demographic. It's like, well, what's the demographic? Well, it's more younger people. Yeah, well, isn't that good? Isn't that where the hope should be? So I don't know, I have hope.
I'm sure you get this a lot, but we are in Hungary and this is probably the first time. So somebody says, don't you think you propagate smoking on your channel? Isn't that another addiction that is harmful?
Yeah, so I do propagate smoking on my channel in as much as I do it publicly and enjoy it and am unashamed of that. Isn't it addictive? Yeah, sure. I don't know. Maybe it is. So then isn't that the same as pornography? Like, no. Just because two things are addictive doesn't mean they're both evil. Like, sugar's addictive. You probably have that sometimes. Gambling is addictive, and yet the church thinks that in certain circumstances it's legitimate, yeah? I mean, all sorts of things can be addictive. Video games can be addictive. It doesn't mean to play a video game or to play a video game like once a week or twice, something like that is wrong. So the problem with pornography isn't principally that it's addictive. The problem with pornography the problem with pornography is that it is an evil way to look at the human person. That's why it's wrong. Like, the human person is a good towards which the only proper and adequate attitude is love. What is love? Well, love is at least to will the good of the other for their own sake. And when I look lustfully upon a person, I'm treating them merely as an object to be used. So that's an evil thing to do. And then to masturbate is an evil thing to do because it thwarts the end of the sexual act. Kind of like bulimia thwarts the end of eating. It's like it's disordered. So there's reasons that pornography is principally wrong, and addiction isn't one of them, I wouldn't say. I would say it's an effect of pornography that we should be concerned about, but that's not principally why it's wrong. And the Catechism of the Catholic Church does condemn the abuse of tobacco. Fair enough. But to condemn the abuse of something doesn't mean there's no legitimate use of it. And since the church doesn't teach that there's no legitimate use of it, then if you're Catholic, you shouldn't do that either, I think.
There's a young parent who is asking, is nudity okay in front of children?
Yeah, I think, well, it depends what you mean by nudity. Well, I'll stick to the safer one, the safer answer. Yeah, like my family and I are going to go to Italy next week, and we'll go to Rome, and we'll go to the Sistine Chapel, and I want them to see naked art. Why? Because there's a not like look at it, not like that, but just like, yeah, it's beautiful. Because there's a way in which the person can be portrayed. See, like, pornography claims to reveal, it reveals too much. No, it doesn't. No, that's the problem with pornography is not that it shows too much, it's that it shows too little. It doesn't reveal the person, it conceals the person. Like, that's the problem. So I think the body can be portrayed in a way that reveals the person and that doesn't cause lust. And I think there's something to be said about looking at the beauty of man and woman. And I don't know if we'll always agree where that line is, but there's something beautiful about, because like when you're condemning pornography, you really don't want to give the impression that what you're condemning is the naked body. And so to be able to show that, like, why not have maybe one thing you should do tonight is go online and buy a beautiful print of the breastfeeding Madonna or an icon of Our Lady breastfeeding. Like, it's probably a good thing that your children know what breasts are for. That's a beautiful thing. Like, so you could do that.
This is another popular question, and it's kind of a divisive one.
Yes.
It says, is the death penalty compatible with Catholicism? I heard Pope Francis talk about it and saying that because of humanity's infinite dignity, it's not.
Yeah, so it's kind of confusing to me and confusing to a lot of people, because he used this word that wasn't intrinsically evil, but I think the word was impermissible or something to that effect. So there does certainly, from where I am, who's a layman, completely ill-equipped to give an answer that you should listen to, probably, but here we go. There seems to be this progression of understanding about the death penalty from John Paul II to Benedict to Pope Francis. But I don't think you could ever say that the death penalty is always wrong, because to say that the death penalty is always wrong is to condemn many acts that God seems to have sanctioned in the scriptures, or which popes have, said is permissible in certain circumstances. So I don't know, either you would say something like, yeah, Pope Francis is right, and that this is a natural progression of our understanding of capital punishment, or you would say Pope Francis is wrong and there's an error in the catechism. I don't know. I'm having Ed Fazer on my show soon, and I'll ask him, and you should listen to his answer, because it will be much more interesting than what I just said.
Another social question that is really arisen now in Hungary is euthanasia, because it's something that has been put into the public consciousness for a while now. Mm-hmm. And it seems like Christians are not necessarily equipped to, say arguments against euthanasia, other than saying that, God gives life and God takes it away. Mm-hmm. So what other arguments would you recommend?
So I spoke earlier about using ugly words for ugly behavior. So from now on, don't say euthanasia. Call it murdering old people. That's what's happening. So, like, is it okay to murder old people? Like, probably not. What if they want it? You still shouldn't be murdering people who want to be murdered. So use that language from now on. Don't say euthanasia. What does that mean? And I don't know what the translation is in Hungarian, but it probably doesn't have the same punch as murdering old people. So, like, here's an argument. It's always wrong to kill innocent people. But murdering old people who are, well, but euthanasia, then, I don't know, there'd have to be some other synonym you'd use, involves murdering innocent people, therefore euthanasia is always wrong, or something like that.
Somebody's asking a very serious question. It says, beer or wine?
I could tell you were joking right away as soon as you did that. Yeah, beer or wine, false dilemma, whiskey.
I think we only have time for one more question. So it's a big pressure to choose now. But I think this one is a good one. Which episode of Pints with Aquinas should one definitely see that you think is a must-watch?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I tell you what, actually this one. So in 2 days, maybe tomorrow, I'll probably release it tomorrow because it's the... Do you guys have Pride Month in this country? Or not?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah. So for Pride Month, my first episode, which I'll just decide now, it's coming out tomorrow, is an interview with a beautiful young woman named Chloe Cole, who at a young age, I think it was around the age of 13 or 14, started presenting as male. And at the age of 15, had her chest mutilated, had her breasts cut off, started taking puberty blockers and testosterone. And about the age of, I don't know, you'll have to listen to the podcast, I forget, 17 or so, she decided, what the hell have I done? And now she is what's known as a detransitioner, and she travels around America and maybe internationally, I'm not sure, pointing to the insanity of transgenderism, but from someone who's been there. So I think it was a very charitable episode in the sense that she helped me understand the hell that these people go through and what that's like. And I asked some very important questions, I think, like, what advice do you have to parents who've given the green light for their children to be mutilated, which is the word we should use, because that is in fact what happens. And now they like suspect they've made the wrong choice, but their immense guilt is preventing them from acknowledging it. Like, what advice do you have to them? So this might be one of the most important episodes we'll release. She's such a beautiful woman. She's very articulate and good and lovely. So you could watch that one. Or another one might be, I don't know, you might not like it, but my interview with Peter Kreeft that came out a couple of months ago, since I've mentioned him 3 times tonight, now 4. Peter Kreeft, 5, K-R-E-E-F-T. He is I think he's 86-year-old philosopher from Boston College. I suspect in 20 or 50 years from now, people will be using his name in the same sentence as Tolkien and Lewis. Kreeft, they'll say his name. He's really excellent. I just want to conclude by thanking you very much for your attention and coming out and listening to me and being so kind. God bless you.
Thank you.